you can meditate in there and there aren't going to be any distractions, or you can be in there and dance in there and do whatever in there and feel good because you're not distracted by all this other stuff. So
Right.
I love that. That's really kind of the ultimate for me as a designer, is finding that, because if you feel good, that's where you're going to do your best thinking.
Welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we are honored with the presence of possibly, in my take on it, maybe one of the most well-known designers from Maine currently. I don't know who else would compete with that. And I believe you were mentioned in a movie reference years ago.
Really?
I think when I first moved here, someone told me about, like, oh yeah, and she was mentioned in a movie reference. I couldn't find it, but I remember seeing it.
Huh.
Like there was some point in a movie where they were like, yeah, I'm gonna go get a rug, probably gonna get an Angela Adams or something.
Wow.
It's somewhere out there. Or I completely dreamed it up, but I distinctly remember it. But anyways, back to the intro for this. So anyways, we have Angela Adams here today, which is really cool because I've seen your work ever since moving here and knowing more about the design community and been really impressed with it, really like it. But today we are speaking with designer Angela Adams, who is known for weaving the rugged beauty of Maine's landscape into her designs. Born and raised on a small island off the coast of Maine, she received her degree in interior design from Philadelphia Art Institute. Angela and husband, fellow Mainer and furniture designer Sherwood Hamill, Sherwood, that's a strong name, started a design business in 1998. The company is known for providing handmade modern area rugs and furniture to customers all over the world who share their commitment to the marriage of quality, modern design, and traditional craftsmanship. Our interview today is sponsored by Maine Home Design. Don't miss Angela's design theory in the upcoming January issue of Maine Home Design. Thank you for coming into the studio today, Angela Adams.
Thanks for having me, Trent.
And as we got sidetracked when you first got here, you have a love of the ocean, as do I. Mm-hmm. Which is either the second or third person we've had on the podcast here that we get very sidetracked talking about all these things, which I think all of them have been female that have broken out the, oh yeah, I love to surf too.
Yeah.
But I haven't, wonder why that is.
Well, that's why we're here, right?
I guess it's why we have to be self-employed, maybe.
I think that is a very big part of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Sorry, we got to keep that close to you so we get good audio quality. So my first kind of odd question, why did no one in your life tell you it was a bad idea to try and pay your bills by making expensive rugs?
That's a good question.
There's a lot of deep, weird issues that are very important nestled into that very odd question.
Well, actually, maybe somebody did. I remember years ago when we were just starting out, I went and talked to a group of retired people to get some business advice because I was thinking about doing this, and they really encouraged me not to. They thought it was kind of a crazy idea and that I should probably just keep it simple.
I'm gonna make rugs.
Yeah, no, really.
So what did they advise you to do at that point? What was their concern?
I think they thought the whole idea was just so out there and kind of far-fetched, and that I would never, that it was just this fleeting, brainstorm I had that wasn't really gonna get any traction.
What did you pitch them on? Like what was the kind of general concept at that moment?
I mean, this was a long time ago, so over 20 years ago. So I think I was really just looking for somebody to help me put a framework around it. Like I knew where I wanted to go, but I wasn't sure how to get there. And I thought someone was going to be able to say, well, first you do this, and then you do that, and then you do this, and then you do that. And instead it was a little bit of a buzzkill, like, oh, maybe you should, keep it simple and do that as a hobby kind of thing. Right. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to have to kind of chart my own, course here.
Right. So what gave you the courage to disregard the advice of your elders?
Well, though only some elders.
Right.
All the rest of the elders were supportive.
Really? Okay.
My family.
Were you in North Haven at this time, or?
No, I had moved to Portland. But all the Portlanders and Maine, all the Mainers and other people I've met have always been supportive. I've been super lucky that way. But what was the question? Sorry.
So, I pull this question from my own experience of thinking I needed to go multiple different directions before I landed in what actually suited me best that I was successful at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I first thought I was going to be a dentist and was doing pre-med and all that. There's no way I could have hacked getting through that schooling or the day-to-day workings of actually doing that kind of work, right? And then I went into architecture, which was far more in my wheelhouse, but it's still the day-to-day workings of how you work as an architect was extremely difficult for my personality type to endure.
Still technical and
very, very technical with very high risk and not a lot of reward. It's a very, very difficult field to make a living at, especially as an entrepreneur. And I remember in that process 2 or 3 times coming across the idea of working as a photographer. And each time I was like, well, that's a pipe dream. That'll never happen. You know? So you had to have in your life probably had people that were more practical and had said, Angela, rugs, really? How much are you going to charge for these? You know, you're not going to pay your bill, you know, but somehow you succeeded at it. And, you know, people buy these very expensive rugs and walk on them, you know, and they improve the space and its beauty and it's, you know, it's all that. What gave you the audacity to think you could jump that gap and land over there safely on the other side?
Not so sure I've landed yet, but well, the goal wasn't to start a rug company.
Really? Okay.
So that just sort of happened. I thought the rugs would be like one of all these other things that we did, and they ended up becoming a big thing. And the furniture is the other big thing. The real goal was to be able to live here in Portland or here in Maine and have creative jobs that we loved.
Right. Which is a kind of a pipe dream in itself before you're paying your bills with it. It feels like that's going to be so hard to attain.
Exactly. So for sure, we knew to do that we would have to design our own jobs.
Right.
And so that was really what happened. And I was, Sherwood's a furniture maker and designer. And
I think we've had several of his pieces in some of the places we've shot. I think some of his work was in Spurwink Retreat. We had shot for Witten.
Yeah.
Really cool pieces there.
Well, they do amazing work. Rob Witten, architects. And he's an awesome person.
Rob Witten. I need to get Rob in here soon.
Yeah. Yeah, you should. He's a super guy. And his team, everybody. And Nadine Cole was the interior designer on that. And she's awesome. So I was a doodler, drawer, pattern designer, and really thought, okay, I'm going to design a lot of patterns and then find a vehicle for those patterns. And maybe it's going to be wallpaper or fabric or whatever. Rugs actually weren't even on the list of things I could do with it.
Really?
And then, so I don't have textile training, but I, kind of like the long, very 20-year story told in 20 seconds or whatever was, I had a studio up on the top of Congress Street next to Willowworth's space up there. And I had an overhead projector and I did sort of designs on acetate and then projected them on the wall and taped up 20 by 30 inch pieces of paper and hand painted pattern after pattern after pattern to create a catalog. And and then kind of painted those patterns on walls. That's really was the first sort of vehicle for it. Oh no, furniture. I painted furniture and stuff like that. But then in Portland, I started painting patterns on people's walls, and then I started to carry around this gigantic portfolio of these really heavy pieces of paper, a big stack of paper, showing people everything. And I met with an interior designer who was up above where 555 is now on Congress Street, and he had this over in the corner of his studio was this whole stack of rug samples. I was like, wow, those are beautiful, and all these colors and patterns and textures.
Something I can apply patterns.
Yeah, I was like, what are these? And he was like, oh, you can make custom rugs, and you can do it right here in Maine, in Lewiston. And I was like, but ding, that is totally what I want to do. So, went to Lewiston and met these guys and saw how they did it and
Nice.
started doing
So
that.
an interesting thing to me that you said in there is that you had no textile training, and like you've become, I mean, justifiably world famous for rugs with something you had no training in. And an interesting thing that I've heard in a lot of discussions is that people who can make the most disruptive progress and change and everything else will generally not know too much about not the subject matter, but the inner workings, the subject, like all of it, like, but can have a passion and an interest in that. They can find this new and different way of doing things and see something that all the other people who are highly knowledgeable in that area are missing because they're staying within the well-known line. So it's kind of like ignorance in many ways will give you an edge up to a degree. Like if I look back, being able to pay my bills by taking pretty pictures, I didn't know what I was getting into, and I was ignorant of how narrow of a window I'm going to have to shoot through from a long distance to actually make it. But yet somehow, I made that work with no training in art, in photography, nothing of that. And it's interesting to me where you've come from and where you've made it to, having that similar background. It was like, I don't really know anything about this very specific thing, but I can take everything that I know and translate it and manipulate this thing to achieve something new, right? And that's what was interesting to me.
Well, I mean, I just have to say, you didn't pick an easy kind of photography either. I mean, you picked
the first
a really
time
challenging.
I tried it, I quit.
Yeah, I mean,
I totally quit.
I am a big fan of your work, and I think to be able to photograph interiors and exteriors, I mean, that's challenging.
To me, it's interesting because to me, exteriors were easy because you kind of engage the world by looking at the outside of things, right? Like a building could be perceived as a face and have angles and everything else that you kind of, you move around and see. When you shoot an interior, you don't really generally think as much about how can I capture this inside of a space? It's like you're dissecting something and going inside of it. And when I tried to do that, I had access to the courthouse here in the Maine State Courthouse here in Biddeford through an architect, Alan Kuhlnholm, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. But he got me access on a day when they were closed. And so I went in, no one was paying me. But like halfway through it, I was just hitting the wall of frustration, and I couldn't find how you make this work. Luckily I kept trying, time after time, and eventually I like it started to click. But yeah, it's definitely a weird thing to approach something, especially interiors, from the inside rather from the outside, So
it's no easy feat.
Yeah, it's weird, but like we were saying earlier, it's like you get to a point where you figure this very difficult thing out in a creative way, and it becomes second nature to a degree, I think. But you also have a responsibility to keep that system that you've come up with. You need to keep revisiting and regenerating that approach, so you don't fall into that groove too much. You need to cover those bases, but always after you've covered those bases, try to maybe break it a bit and see if you can be that new person who fails as a way of progressing and seeing maybe why you failed as a means for a new window to look at something. So there's interesting things to look at there. But
yeah, I think, a lot of it too, I think, is about putting all the energy into or toward that idea or that goal.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're sending all that energy there, like, I can envision like how I want to live my life.
Right.
And I want to be able to do this, as my livelihood. But I mean, we weren't really trying to design a job so much as a life, and to be able to live here in Maine and have, love what we did every day.
Talk more about that. That's interesting to me because I came at what I'm doing very much based on a similar thing. I preconceived like this is the lifestyle I want to live to make this, this short life enjoyable, but also it didn't really find effect that I was doing with it until later, different thing. But preconceiving a lifestyle and then finding a way to make that happen? What drove that for you, and what was the lifestyle that you saw that you wanted to live?
Um, well, I think we wanted to live in Maine,
Hmm.
and we're both from here. Both have lived in other places, but wanted to live here, and didn't want to work for anyone.
Right.
Um,
Why not?
I think we wanted to be independent. I mean, it wasn't that actually, we weren't like hell bent on we don't want to work for anybody because we think we're smarter than everybody, because that is totally not the case. It was more we wanted to have freedom and flexibility. We both knew we would be willing to work our tails off. And but we wanted to love what we were doing,
Mhm.
and we wanted to be as, you know, do a good job at it,
Right.
be good at it. And feel good about it. And so I think for us, that was a big part of it, was living creative lives in Maine, and have some freedom to do that and do it the way we wanted to. But you had, to do that, it kind of turned into like, whoa, well, next thing you know, it's like, oh, maybe we should hire somebody that does this part, and then hire somebody that does that part. And then next thing you know, you've got like somebody doing this and that, and somebody else doing this and that. And then your focus, can be on
Management.
And then there's that careful what you wish for thing, that can happen intermittently throughout the course. But as long as we can just remember what the end goal is, that helps us make decisions along the way.
Right. It's kind of a touchstone. Come
Yeah.
back to.
Yeah. If you just keep saying, wait, is this taking us toward it or away from it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, because it's really easy. All this stuff comes at you from all these directions, and it's like, ooh, that would be really fun. And we could do that. And because we can make that decision, but then it's a deviation from, what the end goal is. So
Right.
maybe we should, I mean, everybody does that, but I think for us, that was really kind of, for us, it was like having a creative lifestyle and feeling good about it. And then we also really enjoy the idea of creating, furniture or area rugs or a space,
Right.
to live in and feel good in.
So the interesting thing I noticed when I first saw your work when moving here, was that there was this vertical component to your rugs that I hadn't noticed in other rugs. And interestingly, last night I was talking with my wife and was like, Angela Adams is coming tomorrow, and she's like, my wife's not really well versed in design stuff, but she had heard your name and was like, so she looked it up, and she noticed the vertical elements, and she's like, the first thing, as a physical therapist, in her mind, the first thing she thinks is like, people might trip over those. Which, like, I would think any rug maker at the outset would be like, well, don't make it, vertical, you'll just kill people, or,
Right.
But then she kept looking through it, and she's like, wow, they come up off the floor, like without, the verbiage to really,
Right.
Elaborate on design, whatever. She just started looking through them, and she's just like, these are amazing. And we're looking for a rug and everything right now. And she's like, we got to get one of these. And my response to me is like, well, just look,
We could arrange that.
we have to go to Home Depot first, sweetie.
No,
But it was really interesting for her, coming from her background, with, working with people with walkers. She's a physical therapist and all that, to see that, and like that little light to go off in her head, like, but then to also experience the, like, wow, these are really beautiful. When you first started, were you the first person to start doing that, or had you seen it before? What gave you the idea to start to do that specifically?
I hadn't seen it before, but I doubt I was the first person to do it, or we, because it wasn't I. It's never been I. But the first show that we ever did, I remember Jill Osgood, who worked for us for years, super talented Portland artist. I remember at the first show, Jill coming up to me saying, everybody's talking about the different pile heights and all the texture. Maybe nobody else does this. And I was like, really? Because like I said, we didn't have any background in this, and we were just making what we loved. And but also, to your earlier point of not having formal training, I think has often been more of an asset than a liability
I
because
100% agree
yeah,
with that.
we just didn't know. So and so we had when we started to make rugs initially in Lewiston area, and then over time, Sherwood had the idea to start making them ourselves on Congress Street, in
Right.
where Print Bookstore is now, where we were for 18 years. First floor, he was like, let's set up. We had a furniture shop in the back half of the building, and he thought we were looking for a tenant for the front half, and he was like, why don't we just start making rugs here? And I was like, we don't know how to make rugs. And next thing you know, it's like we're making rugs in there. And we hired some Lewiston rug makers that had lots of experience. And so it was excellent because upstairs we had our studios. So I could go down and say, okay, I like that, but can you do it in the opposite direction? And they would say, no, you always have to go in this direction because that's where, that's the way you do it. And we'd be like, no, let's go the other way and see what happens.
We're paying your salary.
Yeah.
You're going to go the other
Let's
way.
try it. Or can
All
you
right.
put another, run 3 pieces of wool, through that tool and see what we got. And they would say, no, you can't do it. It's too nubbly. And we're like, we love nubbly, so that was good for us. And then
Yeah.
Sherwood being, having, an architectural engineering 3D mind, could create little tools for us that would help us make some of those techniques.
Right.
So it was fun because it was like a medium that we didn't have any experience in, but it was kind of endless what could be done. So that was great. I mean, I think that was good. At the same time, I love all the sculptural, and so to your wife's point, you don't want to put some of those in a high traffic area, unless you're wearing a helmet or whatever. Right. I mean, but we also, I love, lately, actually, the thing I'm mostly in is just really subtle, simple, no real changes in pile height. And that's the stuff that I've been working on lately. So, there's something for all different parts of the home or commercial space or whatever. So it's not all that, but
Right.
but that we did push that a lot for a lot of years.
Yeah, it's a very, to me, being a photographer, anytime your rugs are in the space, I rejoice because you get these great, if they're the ones with different pile heights, you get these great shadows, which all of a sudden, instead of there being all this depth and texture on the walls only or out the windows, then in the floor, all of a sudden you get this great, that feeling of shadow and highlight and movement and everything too. And it's just, it's really neat. I mean, when you look at this rug that we're on and my parents got rid of it. So I was like, it'll go great in the studio.
Oh, I like it. It's a great color.
Yeah. My mom will be very, very tickled.
Well, these thick rugs are great for getting on the floor and
stretching. I mean, it works, but it's monochromatic and it's, pretty much all the same. But then you look at these Persian rugs and as far as the color differences and everything, they're just super, out there. But then you combine this, colors and height and everything else, it becomes this very vibrant, lively thing, which to me, in our home right now, we have very, very monochromatic walls, windows, floor, and furniture. And then we have one piece of art on the wall that is by this artist, Heather Chontos, which is just super loud. But it's just such a perfect, controlled chaos in that part. And the rest is very calm. And to me, I don't know, it says something to me. And I see your works as being very interesting in that same way, which is really neat.
I like Heather's work a lot. I think my goal really with the rug design isn't about drawing attention to that rug, even though some of them are, bold colors or patterns, but so much as creating a vibe or a particular energy in a space. So I love the whole monochromatic room with a little pop color, whether it's an accessory or art or whatever. I love that. Or not,
I can enjoy the interest and presentation of any well done space, but to me, the most emotionally calming space for my home is one that's really, really minimal and clean, that has very strong just accent points. Very, very almost like a museum quality to the minimalist
I
part
love
of it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You can
something to.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also probably something to do with my naturally controlling tendencies and manipulative tendencies to be able to eliminate all these other variables and stay on track or something. I don't know. There's always like a good side and a
Yeah.
flip side to
Yeah.
anything, and I always think that if someone can learn both their talents and their shortcomings, that you can really find a better medium. And I wonder often how linked these ideas of what kind of space you're comfortable in, how that relates to a person's personality and why they
Oh, I love
gravitate
that.
towards that.
I love that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, I
it's
think that's really that's kind of where I feel like the design process ends up taking me is what's going to make you feel good. So, what's going
mhm,
to make you be able to think clearly and feel good and breathe and not be too tense. I mean, the I don't like to be, you know, I don't like really violent movies or super disturbing stuff because I don't like how it makes me feel.
mhm,
But not to say I don't have to watch fairy tales all the time, but I think with design, like my evolution of the collections have been, they just naturally move from one layer to another. So it hasn't been a jump around like now we're going to do a collection of animal prints and now we're going to do a collection of, you know, whatever. It's always been this evolution. Like it started out with our first collection called State of Mind, which was about designing a state of mind. It was a really super
okay,
simple, organic, geometric collection that was sort of our alphabet, is the way that I've always looked at it. Like
interesting.
really simple shapes, and it was a really neutral colors, and it was all about state of mind. What state of mind are you looking for? You could do those designs in like hot pink, or you could do them in like camel or whatever. But what is the state of mind that you're looking for? And then the second collection was, we did that actually, evolved that collection over a few layers over time. And then the second one was called Utopia, which was about a kind of an evolution of the state of mind, in that it was about arousing the senses and really, firing on all cylinders or certain cylinders, like maybe certain designs had made you think about sound or smell or, touch or whatever. And then, so the collections have kind of evolved in that way. And so now, like, it's done this thing without going through the layer of all the collections. But, after Utopia, I went to, did this, trying to think, Birds and the Bees was about imagining Mother Nature's living quarters and maybe like where she might do her design work.
Interesting.
Which was really fun. And then taking that idea of the senses and all of that stuff a little bit deeper. And then it goes into, I went down into the center of the earth to really explore minerals and geology and the energy in those minerals,
Right.
and sort of the power of the center of the earth and the fire down there and
Right.
everything. And then that was just a really incredibly fun collection to do. And from there, it was.
Now, what is your process like when you're envisioning and pulling from something that's so otherworldly to a degree and trying to bring it into an objective existence, but you're pulling it from your subjective take on that? Like, what is your process of really that bridge to like, here's what I think, experience, and feel, and now through this process, I'm going to justify that this is a visual, physical representation of that. You get what I'm saying?
I
It's such
think
a
I do.
weird
Yeah.
thing.
Well, it's an idea. So it's back
Right.
to that whole thing about energy, which is kind of the ultimate inspiration, I'd say,
Mhm.
for me. So I think not like I don't think I fully knew that I was going to do cave fantasy that as a collection. I did know that I was really interested in taking all of those previous collections and inspirations and sketches and designs um, deeper. And I felt like the only place I could go with it was down into the earth. And the energy that's there.
Mhm.
So then the sketches kind of take off from there. I mean, crystals and minerals and all that stuff is just like, I could sketch that stuff for the rest of my life and be
Really weird
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, it's super fun. So that kind of leads it there. And then after going deep down into the core, I remember thinking, okay, what's next? Where is this going? And then the next natural place for me to go was blast out of there into space.
Right.
And then what is that energy? And then how does that translate into 2D? And then next thing you know, it's like, because the center of the earth and then the universe, and everything is, you can connect it. You can connect all those dots and that kind of energy and then how that makes you feel. And so then the Astral Garden collection was really about that, like going into space and then kind of allowing yourself to be who you truly are. I mean, it sounds so,
It's so woo and vague, but
yeah, but
it touches each person at their core when they hear it in some way that they know, but they have to decipher it. It's
well,
weird.
yeah, I think for me, it's like if I do all my designs in a sketchbook, or sometimes it'll be painting, but it's not on the computer. And so I think taking it to that, like knowing that I wanted to do sort of a whole study on being who you are, and making spaces that help you, like you just said, in your home. The one that you feel the most connected to is the one that has sort of a museum-like quality of pureness. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Like, I love that because you can meditate in there and there aren't going to be any distractions, or you can be in there and dance in there and do whatever in there and feel good because you're not distracted by all this other stuff. So
Right.
I love that. That's really kind of the ultimate for me as a designer, is finding that. Because if you feel good, that's where you're going to do your best thinking. That's if you feel good, that's where you're going to do your best surfing. And if you feel good,
Right.
that's where you're going to be be your best. So that's what we're all trying to get to. So then it's about, how do you create a space that helps you do that? And so that's so the whole idea of designing from like a simple alphabet and the senses and then digging into the core and then going up into outer space, that's all kind of like that same study of like, how are we going to grow and morph as people and translate that into product. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because the whole goal, remember, has been to have jobs that we love and do what
Right.
we love, and that exploration is
Do you see
fun.
the result of your exploration of feeling and subjective experience? You see the end result, the product, as some process of seeking truth to a degree?
Yeah, probably.
Not as much facts, but
Well, the
truth.
being who you are idea, which I love that idea of be who you are, because who you are changes throughout. I mean, you're always you, right? But what we know, those times where we really feel like, this is me, this is my place. This is like, we live on the ocean because the ocean is that for us, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And being in the water, I mean, there is nothing more incredible than being on the water when the light makes it look like mercury. I mean, that's just super off the charts for some of us. And so then what can you doing things that help you feel good are probably just going to help you give out good energy. And if everybody could do that, then we're not grumpy. That said, I mean, I've had plenty of days where I'm like not great energy because I might be grumpy or frustrated.
So I think just last night or the night before, I struggle with being a middle-aged man with kids and providing and blah blah blah, and I can get grumpy. It happens to people occasionally, and I don't have a lot of energy for social interactions beyond a very small group. Okay. And so if I'm with if I'm with my wife and 2 kids and they start like and noise and everything else, I'm like, and I have to like breathe deep. And it's just like someone's got a cattle prod. And so I'm really working at just like building my ability for patience and calm and everything else. And I was talking to my kids last night or the night before, I don't know. And I was like, so if you had to rate Dad and like how much is grumpy Dad and how much is happy Dad, and they don't want to let me off the hook completely, so they're like, grumpy is about this much and happy was about. I was like, but what did I do today? I was like, well, earlier, like, you guys be quiet and go upstairs. Mommy and I are trying to talk, and and so like, yeah, that was grumpy, and so now they'll often. Even then this morning, I forget what I was asking them to do or not do. They're like, grumpy Dad, I'm like, okay, all right, okay. But yeah, to find that way of knowing who you are, both good and bad, so you can work with it to be that better person who can give more positivity than negativity. I find myself very much in the middle of that struggle right now. But finding that, understanding it, and some way creatively sharing that, I think what you do, and it ends up being a product that I almost see as like a reminder. Like if I were to buy something of yours, it's like I'm buying that because it reminds me that there is beauty and that there are people out there thinking about these kinds of things and translating them into things that you can permanently, relatively permanently put in the space that you live, that constantly reminds you of like beauty, and that beauty is that deepest sense of truth in many ways. And that's why I really love that painting that I have from Heather Chontos, is that it's kind of like it's the most fluid expression of emotion in a 2D color format that I worked with her on a video and just watched her paint, and it was just very interesting to see her just emotionally communicate through smearing paint around. But
amazing. Yeah.
But it's so right in the end, right?
Yeah.
And that is really interesting to me to be able to come across someone who in that form can communicate like that. And it's I don't know, it's just weird to be able to sit there and look at it sometimes and just kind of be reminded that there is this, that most of our existence is subjective,
Right.
and there is beauty, and that is truth. And for me, I'm in very much a flux of understanding what meaning is and what we mean.
Right.
And
right.
that kind of thing adds, which is odd, but that kind of thing adds some grounding to my existence, right? With what you create and what drives you, what do you pull from for what you believe we mean that translates into what you create, what you give the world?
I'm not 100% sure I understand that question.
Well, like what I mean, in the big question, like what do we I'm not sure I understand what the hell you're saying.
Life?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know?
Yeah, I mean, because to put something out there like you do, like I do, we interpret this existence and translate it, but we translate it through our priorities and the things we give value to. Like what do you think our collective meaning is, and how does that inform what you do and why you do what you do?
Well, I mean, artists designers, I mean, what we do is, interpret, our ideas, our dreams, our fears or whatever they may be, um, and express it,
Hmm.
right? But so something you said a moment ago made me think about music, because music obviously is a super
Such
inspiration
a
for,
weird thing too. I keep
and
saying that, but
yeah,
music, it's just
and
vibrations, but
it
it gives
is.
you feeling.
And sometimes, I mean, haven't you listened to music before and just watched it like play out like it's a visual thing? I mean, that blows my mind when,
I
especially
always come
jazz.
up with
Yeah.
videos as I'm watching a song
Yeah. Isn't that
about the
amazing?
emotion and the situation that it would create.
Right.
I have there's this one song by something, it's a Canadian province name and I forget what, but I come up with this vision that it's this really like outlandish song that was very popular to a degree in the indie scene. But I imagine this situation of somewhere in the Western Plains of Canada that this guy is in his early 30s and has a wife and newborn baby, pulling out his synthesizer for his wife, baby, and in-laws to play them this song. And he's going to go out and be like, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to be a musician. It's for the in-laws to hear this song. It's just like, the guy doesn't sing well. It's like this really computer generated beat. It's just like he's going to fail and take our daughter and grandson down with him. But, but he has this vision and it's like it makes him feel alive and he's going to give that to the world. And there's these people who can't see it
Right.
and are just kind of uncomfortably in the living room like, oh no,
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's
music
fun.
makes me do things like that.
Right.
But also it makes me cry. It makes me
Yeah.
weep for situations that friends are going through. It's just it's such an immediate key to emotions
It
and
is.
experience.
Yeah, I know. I mean, so I think that kind of thing, like where you can do that with photography, and you can do it with anything, and understand that whole world. Yet that's a little portal into this whole world, and you can really let your imagination fill in a lot of that story. So I think, I don't know. I think that I mean, we're so lucky to have the freedom to be creative,
Right.
so that's kind of the end of it. It's like we better be
Extremely
good at
lucky.
it, because
Yeah.
not
But I
everybody
mean,
can.
so to make the conversation slightly more practical.
Oh, come
than all
on.
For people who think like, man, I'd love to work creatively and not have to be stuck in traffic every day. Like, what is your advice to someone who wants to make a living as a creative in some way that you've experienced?
I think, because I've been asked something like that a lot over the years, just talking to young people or people thinking about changing careers. For one, you and I both know it often looks a lot more fun than it is, because it is it's a crazy amount of work to run your own business. And the glamorous side is such a thin layer of it. And
It's a thin
glamorous
layer,
is like a
but
crazy
it's
word.
there. But then you also, like you're saying, the things you don't see are the waking up at 3 a.m. and
The worry.
all of these things hit you like
Right.
you're going to fail.
Right.
Like even like you're Angela Adams, but I bet you still wake up and you're like, oh crap. Like what
Yeah,
if
more
what
often
if
than I
what
should.
if
Yeah. So yeah, the what ifs are what keep you up at night. But I think that the advice, or not advice, but the thing that I'll ask people that ask me that question about, like, what is your advice, is to really take the time to sort out how you want to live. Because I think if people do that and they allow themselves to really envision how, like, how many hours do you want to work a day, and how many days do you want to work a week, and how many weeks do you want to work a year? Get realistic about that right out of the gates. And within that, that's going to tell you a lot, like whether you should have your own business, whether the creative thing should be a hobby and not a career.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe your goal is to make a crazy amount of money. Well, that's going to be hard to do being a creative person, for the most part, like But if you want to go make a lot of money, maybe go make a lot of money so that you have freedom when you're in the
Right.
studio and you're not freaking out about money. So I think for people to get realistic about that, a lot of people think they want to have their own business, and they think because that idea sounds good, like I want to work in the studio all the time. Well, so do I. Like I want to work in the studio all the time. I spend my life trying to get to the studio,
Right.
like, but I can't go to the studio. Or I always feel like, oh, I can't really open a sketchbook until my brain has like processed this, and that, these responsibilities I need to take care of, because then I'll be able to do better work because I'm not distracted by this other stuff, or I have my other responsibilities. And so, if I just wanted a studio practice all the time, I probably wouldn't have a business,
Right. Right.
So for me, I have to make a living. We have responsibilities to our team and to, people and stuff. So that I have to sort of balance the job side of it with the dreamy, freedom
Right.
of,
Freedom to walk to a coffee shop and sit in a corner and sketch
yeah,
in the sunlight.
and just be able to walk upright, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like to be able to just do all of that. Like we have it so easy here compared to most places. So knowing that and appreciating it, keeps you from wasting time, hopefully, even though sometimes we're like,
Sometimes wasting time is very effective towards getting, especially if you're working out a creative concept. Sometimes you need to waste time to let your mind rest, or you need to go out and run or paddle
Right.
or surf and let those things kind of resolve themselves subconsciously to a degree. And I always find I have a lot of kind of revelation and problem solving and everything else when I'm either surfing or exercising or something.
oh
So,
yeah, I solve so many problems, mountain biking or surfing or whatever. Because then it's like Sherwood and I often will do that stuff together, and it'll be like, all right, I just figured out
right.
whatever it is.
Hold on, I got it. Got to write it down.
Yeah, I think I know how we're gonna handle this.
Right.
And well, that's our way of meditating in a lot of ways too. So being out there, and there's nothing like doing that thing that you love, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And for us, we like being on the water. That is just like the light goes on, and granted, sometimes it's like a scary situation, and that then you come out of it and you walk out of the water and you're like, oh my God, that was just like the most fun I've ever had in my whole life. Again.
Yeah, I've had those moments where just the other day I had a really not bad wipeout, but it really like picked me. I bit it and the wave picked me up probably a good 8-9 feet and threw me, and it was a beach break. I wasn't too worried about it, but I just come up from those kind of things, like cobwebs are cleared and
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. Like
Yeah.
it's funny how that kind of like, I'm not dead.
Right. I know. Well, Mother Nature, she's our greatest inspiration and fear and everything. And, it's humbling. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
I really like your advice there, though, of kind of preconceived the lifestyle you want to live, because I think what that does is you intrinsically know what you need and what you enjoy, and if you're going to be going too far outside of that, you're going to become ineffective. Okay, so by putting down a preconceived idea of what you want your life to be, your lifestyle, you're kind of setting boundaries for the optimal giving back or contributing that you can do. And I think, as you said earlier, having that as a touchstone to come back to, this is how we wanted to live our lives, is making this decision now at this point in our business going to, erode that. And I think that's pretty sound advice. And I unconsciously did that starting out as a photographer. But interestingly, it's worked out. So
I actually, when I was growing up, I was always athletic and just thought no matter what, I'm going to have some kind of a sporty career. And so I studied phys ed. my freshman year in college at the University of Maine in Presque Isle, because that's what I thought I was going to do. And that's what everybody thought I was going to do is, be a coach or be something in the athletic field. And first semester, that's what I did and hadn't thought otherwise until I met somebody, actually a friend, Tori Peterson from Vinyl Haven, was in my dorm, and her sister Shelly also, and Tori was an art major, and she also had played basketball, and I was playing basketball, and she was studying art, and I just thought, really? Like, didn't think about that seriously.
Right.
And then switched my major to art, and so I think then, but that didn't mean I wasn't going to do, sporty stuff and,
Right.
make that an important part. It's a super important part of my life because it makes me feel good and I love it and it's fun and I love the people that I get to do it with.
Inspired.
Yeah, I stay inspired, and it's like soaking up nature in all these really incredible ways and seasons and stuff. So maybe that kind of goes back to that. How do you want to live your life? Like, I know being outside and recreating in nature is the thing that makes me the happiest. Then that's going to be part of my life, but I don't have to make that my career.
Right.
I also know that I love creativity and I love designing and I love working with a team. And that makes me super happy too. And that's the one that's probably going to pay the bills, hopefully,
Right.
and make that into the job, the fun job, dream job that sometimes isn't fun. But do the other thing that I love that makes me happy too,
Right.
as a side note. But that fuels it, like we know we get so much inspiration being outside. And then, so some people, like, that's what fuels it. If that, there's no end to those designs and patterns and colors and textures in nature. It's finding a way to translate that in a way that is going to, pay the bills and
Right.
make payroll and, buy the
Sure.
supplies and bring
Well,
rugs.
it's interesting to me. I experienced the exact same thing where I went pre-med, pre-dental first, and then saw a friend of mine, Caleb Johnson, going
Oh,
to
yeah,
architecture school. And I was like, you can do that?
Yeah.
And then I saw what he was doing in architecture school, and I was like, whoa, that looks like fun. And
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed architecture school. It was just the practice of it is nothing like architecture school. It's like 10% of it maybe. But yeah, going through that and then seeing that. And then when I went into photography, kind of like you're saying, I knew right off, like, I did not want to shoot surfing because that was, to a degree, sacred. Like, I knew if there was waves, the last thing I wanted to do was not be able to be in them.
Right. You don't want to be the guy in the water with a huge camera.
And I mean, I've been sick a couple times when there's waves, and I've hauled myself out to just, like, because I couldn't surf, and then take some photos of it, and I found that fun and rewarding, but it wasn't how I wanted to make a living and stack so much on there. I knew that I wanted to have this differentiation between surf time and work time.
Right.
And even now, my creative process, I don't generally pick up a camera too much unless I'm working, because I kind of want to make the time that I'm using to charge people money as that kind of enjoyable, energetic time of creativity. And it's odd how I work. I don't like producing images unless I have a preconceived end idea for them.
Right.
I'm not one who just wanders and shoots like a lot of my friends do, that do it really well and is really cool. I don't do that as much because I feel like I'm making work for myself that I haven't envisioned what I want it to be. And that's just not as much how I work.
Right.
So it's interesting to see the different ways that people work in that way. So there's a couple more questions here, and we'll end out with the more trite ones to a degree. My wife and I just built a house about a year and a half ago now, and we still don't have a lot of stuff on the walls. And I'm thinking, like, all right, I could go and wander a bit with a preconceived idea that I'm making art for my walls. I could motivate myself that way. then I got kind of thinking, like, when I see my work on my walls, it's a little like, I don't know. Do I want my work or other people's work on the walls? You know, I can do it for free. So there's, you know, cheap Trent gets to be fulfilled. But how many of your rugs are in your house? And then that can give me some feedback. Should I do this?
Oh, we have a lot because we mix a lot of different sizes in a room, so that like some smaller ones. But it's interesting. I mean, people probably don't expect this, but our primary rug is a big white rug.
Big white flat
Yeah,
rug.
it's a beautiful mohair texture. So it's really about texture. And then around it, we have a lot of small rugs, and then we have a big, beautiful Honor Mac painting on our wall, and we love her work, and Tom Hall, and so it's a lot about that work. But you know, with the light colored rug, I love to see the shape of my cats on it, and you know, like I like to see kind of what happens with that and mix it up. So yeah, so I mean, you can layer rugs too, you know, and do some really cool things with them. So yeah, you can have a lot of rugs. Plus, you can move them around. That's what's
Right.
nice. You can change up a room in 10 minutes by switching the rugs.
Do you change your living environment a lot?
The little things, not the big things so much, but I do change up the little things a lot.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Why do you think you do that?
You just notice something. I mean, I'm trying to break myself of it, but I've had a, you know, collector problem a little
collector
bit,
streak,
like
huh?
collecting little.
What
cool
are your
things.
what's your hardest thing to stop collecting?
Well, I have kind of stopped collecting. I'm
Oh.
in the give it away mode right now.
Oh,
I just
okay.
want to be down to nothing, pretty much. That's I've got to really. I mean, I'm so far from that, but that's the goal: is just
Right.
get rid of it all. You know, I have some really neat minerals and rocks, crystals and stuff that'll be. I mean, they're not the kind of thing you want to like carry around with you, but those are, you know, I'll give those to people that I know I can be around and visit and go see again.
You get to see it again.
Yeah. So.
All right. So, what is next for Angela Adams?
For the person,
Yeah,
or the business.
both. Whatever.
For the person, just it's the same thing. Sherwood and I are continually trying to set ourselves up to do our best work. So hopefully, our best work is coming down the pike, and you know, I want to do more of it, have more studio time, have more creative time. You know, shed those things that I don't like about myself, like worrying about things, and learn how to have more time to do those things that I love. That's it. That's the ultimate, is having that time. And so I guess that all just totally mirrors the business. Is our business is, I love where we are right now. We're actually so similar to what our structure was when we started over
cool.
20 years ago. And that it's nice. It's a really simple business. We have a incredible team, and it's really us. We're focusing more on our made to order rugs and furniture, and less about, you know, designing collections and bringing them and then selling the ready to ship stuff. So working with people on custom projects, but we like what we're doing right now, because you know, with anything, it's like you could do this and you could do that and you could do this and you could do that, and now we're less about like jumping on all of those opportunities and trying to be really good at the ones that we're focusing on.
Right.
So that's, you know, trying to keep it simple. You know, that's a challenge.
Well, I think I'm envious of you in that your business model is a little more like you're a fine art photographer rather than a commercial photographer, in that the works that you're selling, you have to go out and drive yourself to create, and then you sell, mostly, it seems, which I often think that would be that would be nice. But at the same time, I'm sure there's the difference in the process is going to have different stresses and everything else as well. And I often enjoy working with clients that have predetermined boundaries and requirements and everything else as well, because it allows me to hone my creativity in just the right area to complement what they're doing. So, but that always intrigues me. People that have gone, in my mind, even that step further to like they're paying themselves essentially by creating specific art that they made and then selling it rather than being a commercial artist to a degree. So
I know. Well, I bet there's some magic combo of the two, and I don't know what those percentages are for anybody, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we have a business. So, we have to, and we want that business to be right side up or it's really no fun at all.
Right.
So you have to make good decisions and be patient, which is not an entrepreneurial trait.
Yeah, I'm so not patient.
I am so not patient. So your kids probably teach you patience,
Oh, that, or I just be grumpy dad a lot. Or
Yeah.
I'm grumpy dad.
I can be grumpy a lot of the time too. So, but I think, it is, I think at the end of the day, if we can maybe stay true to what we really love, then then we're going to, be putting out good energy, and that's
good art.
hopefully going to lead us to the best work. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming
Thanks,
down
Trent.
to Biddeford and checking it out. And it's been really enjoyable to talk to you about your creative process, your business process, and everything else, and to learn about your passion of the ocean and everything else. So,
Thanks for sharing your stuff too.
yeah, well, I'm an open book. So.
No, you're not.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. It was great talking to you. Be sure to catch Angela's article in the upcoming issue, I believe, of Main Home Design. And thanks again, Angela Adams.
Great. Thanks, Trent.